Fellow rice farmers, we have some strange looking folk carrying boomsticks joining us today. The enemy is very familiar though. 3.5 stacks of Takeda soldiers, predominantly Ashigaru with a strong core of samurai and cavalry in the first army. This is by no means a difficult fight. Portuguese tercios are one of the best units hands down, capable of scoring well over 1,000 kills per unit should they be able to expend all their ammunition, which they are likely to in a multi-phase siege defense, especially when we have a healthy number of high morale Yari Ashigaru to slow the enemy advance. And if they aren't enough, Portuguese tercios can give a decent account of themselves in close quarters combat. Most of this battle is as simple as defeating the first army in detail, as their reinforcements will be filing in from the same direction. By the time armies 2 through 4 make it to the fort, their daimyo, not Takeda Shingen, in fact he's not even Takeda at all, will have been gunned down or skewered on a spear, his samurai in a rout causing further mayhem in the approaching forces. The final phase of the fight will be a bit trickier. We'll be pitted against a horde of enemy archers who will shred our poorly armored Yari while remaining beyond the range of our guns. This save is courtesy of Leo Freak, and if any of you have any tough saves or just an interesting battle in Shogun 2 or Fall of the Samurai, I'd be glad to try them. You can hop onto Discord using the link in the description. What is up guys? In a break from the last fight, which was pretty difficult, a pretty difficult Fall of the Samurai fight, which we ended up losing, we have a easier fight this time, thanks mostly to Portuguese tercios. A lot of high experienced Portuguese tercios with upgraded accuracy against a Takeda horde with a pretty healthy amount of samurai in the first stack, led by a non-Takeda general, Kosaka Muneyoshi, who is at rank 3, followed by another 2.5 armies. It's gonna be quite simple, quite a simple approach to the battle. It just requires a bit of awareness of how archers are going to target some units in the fort, just so we can reduce our losses. It's not a difficult fight to win at all, but your casualties can snowball if you just get lured into a false sense of complacency because, oh, I have Portuguese tercios, of course I'm gonna win this. And unfortunately we have a foggy battle on our hands, but we can cope with it, it's fine. And I made a mistake over here. You saw over there by turning off fire at will. I meant to turn on guard mode, but I'll correct that mistake later on in the fight before it costs me anything. It took me a while to realize why my tercios aren't firing when the first units got into range, but it's all good. We have a bit of a margin of error in this fight. So we have a lot of high experienced units. And of course, it's going to be a very pike and shot heavy fight because we have nothing but spears and tercios, no good heavy infantry. Tercios, though, can fill that role in rather well if you need to use them in a pinch for a melee, to get a good charge off, to get an added morale shock. You know, have one unit of tercios fire and give a morale debuff while another charges and deals a second debuff from flanking. And even though they have reduced range versus archers, they can still tank blows pretty well, but I'm not going to entertain it. I don't like having valuable units take arrow fire at all, even from Bo Ashigaru. We're not playing on legendary difficulty. I don't know which difficulty this is on, but either way, I'm not taking any chances on letting units get targeted by archers. I'm going to have a general inside the fort with stand and fight active, just giving the tercios even better marksmanship, sending a unit of Yari cavalry out ahead to try and entice the enemy soldiers to attack. One of the problems, or it's not always a problem, but sometimes it can be an advantage, the AI will try to link up all of its forces together when it has reinforcements, so they'll just stop and wait for the rest of the force to catch up. It does mean that you'll have to fight them all at the same time, but it also means that should units start breaking, there's going to be a lot more of a morale debuff from friends routing. It also means they're going to approach a very nasty bottleneck at the fort walls, because they're all going to try climbing the walls at the same time, and it's going to take forever, and they're just going to trickle their way onto the wall right into my Yachty, my potent Yachty and Tercio combo. I also have the bows inside placed very deliberately. I have them in loose formation behind the walls because I have enough experience to know, I've mentioned this before, but it always bears repeating that. Yeah, and here we have the Tercios are not firing because fire will is off. Enemy is sending cavalry in a sort of probing attack ahead. I just realized at this point, yeah, I messed up and now they're going to start firing. But as I was saying, I placed my bows right behind the wall because enemy archers prefer targeting units inside rather than units on the walls. So it's purely to get to draw their fire away from the Tercios. And because archers are so reluctant to switch targets, you can slowly pull the bow Ashigaru back and then eventually drag the enemy archer unit into range of your guns, and at that point the Tercios will just shred them. I'm not placing my Yachty towards the east or west side of the fort based on the minimap because they're just gonna get targeted by archers and shredded by them. And there it is, we have the enemy units. You can see on the minimap they're starting to link up instead of attacking, so I decide to change my battle plan. Let's adapt. You gotta be willing to adapt. In these fights, I'm sending these units towards the western side of the fort, where there's a smaller contingent of the army led by the generals. And already we have a unit of Bow Ashigaru taking the bait, as I mentioned earlier. They're getting shredded by Tercios, not even providing any counter fire. I'm sending a unit of Yachty cavalry around to try and bait the bows, and you can see now it's working. The bait is working. They are targeting the archers instead of the Tercios. It also means that it's easier to dodge their arrows as they have to arc them over. Tercios with rapid fire. It's better to get rapid volley off as early as possible in the fight because it takes a while for the timer to count down, so you can use it twice potentially in these longer fights, multi-stage, and the AI has decided to attack on both sides to converge on the fort. Same thing is happening on the eastern side. We have a unit of Bow Ashigaru drawing fire from enemy archers, keeping our Tercios healthy and rather fresh. And they have so much experience, and they're supported by stand and fight, and this is, I don't like these late game siege defenses or siege battles because it's a question of, it really becomes a question of unit quality and stat stacking, kind of like the later games. You can see it already happening here, signs of it, with Tercios not only being great at range and having all this experience, and then the general supporting them. I'm putting a Yachty Ashigaru back because the AI decided to target them. But already we have units wavering. Units are shaken on the left side of the fort. Archers are getting whittled down. I'm trying to look for any targets that I can use that I can target with my Yachty cavalry. I'm just keeping them aside for now. Once units start routing, I'll spring them forth and we'll close in for the kill. We need to kill as many of them as possible, prevent them from rallying, as I have not yet killed the enemy general, so units are not going to shatter. They will rout and come right back to the fight. I'm sending the Yachty cavalry to target the bow samurai, and here the bow samurai are going to try targeting. They almost managed to get the volley off, and that could have been devastating on the Yachty cavalry. They're big targets. They don't have a lot of armor on them. They have a pretty modest amount. Not the same as Katana Cavalry, and that's one thing Katana Cavalry are good for. They are a bit better at tanking archer volleys. At least drawing enemy fire away from your softer cavalry units. And I was cautious enough to pull the Yachty Cavalry out before the enemy cavalry got into the fight, and instead presented a unit of Yachty to the enemy cavalry. You've always got to pay attention to the way to the matchups you're being presented with. Tercios are under a bit of pressure, though it doesn't seem like the enemy is going to stay in the melee very, very long. There are some units that manage to get in through the rear. The enemy general is dismounting, and I think maybe he's trying to enter the fort. I'm not sure. We have a few samurai units who made it into the fort, and because they have a bit of experience and their general's still alive, it's not that easy to break them, especially if he's within range to give them the morale boost. Yachty Cavalry. You can see all that entire swarm of enemy cavalry approaching from the east, by the way. I wasn't paying attention to the minimap. I'm not used to having the minimap, so I just forget about it. But you can see an entire horde of enemy cavalry approaching. This is the second wave. There's another wave. There are still units that are entering the map. But I'm switching gears now, bringing the Yachty Ashigaru back to the front. Pulling the Yachty Cavalry out because they've done their job of baiting enemy units. I want enemy units to go for my Yachty Ashigaru over the cavalry so that the guns can fire away at their own leisure. It appears enemy cavalry are dismounting. They have this weird tendency to dismount even if they decide not to go for the fort. It's just really weird. There's a unit of warrior nuns in the mix. They're actually more dangerous than Naginata warrior monks in the AI's hands because the warrior nuns have better stats, and though they don't have Warcry, the AI doesn't really make very good use of Warcry anyway, so it benefits more from just having better stats baseline. One difficulty though that you're gonna run into in these late game siege defenses with Tercios or even Matchlock Samurai is actually running out of ammo because of how fast their fire rate is. And they fire faster when they're on the walls as well. So you've got to be aware. You've got to keep tabs on their ammunition. Tercios can get over 1,000 kills, but they will quite easily run out of ammunition. So you need to be aware enough to be ready to swap units or rotate units out on the walls. They're not all going to expend their ammunition in the same way. So you've got to pull units off walls, and sometimes it bugs out, but you've got to try. Pull units off walls, bring in another one, a fresh one that hasn't used up most of its ammunition. Another enemy general has taken the bullet literally. There are still some units filing into the fort, and I started getting frustrated or annoyed at this point because they just kept on coming, even with all the damage, even with all the corpses littering the battlefield, with all the men running away and wavering. There's still more units. They're still sending in more. Even with all of the damage we've done, according to the game's balance of power, we still haven't gotten a decisive advantage over them. It's like 60-40. We've got some samurai. I think that's the unit of Yachty Samurai down there. Scoping in the terrain to see where all the slopes are so I can get the most favorable fights for my Yachty Ashigaru. I don't know why I brought this unit of Tercios out. I think it was to try and set them up in the line, but they're just gonna get caught. I'm gonna make a few mistakes over here, just weird mistakes. We got Yachty Ashigaru intercepting the infantry. Now my cavalry are getting caught, and I'm not aware. You can see that those poor cavalry just getting slaughtered right now, and it's gonna take a while for me to realize what's going on. Like, I forgot about a unit that just got stuck here. That's unfortunate. I brought my general outside because I wanted to shift the front of the fight and push and put stand and fight further forward in front of the walls. But if you pay attention to the mini-map now, you can see I made a horrible mistake doing this because it turns out they're far from done. The balance of power even went slid back in their favor slightly. That's what we're dealing with. I left some gaps in the Yari Ashigaru here to try and get some gunfire going from the tercios behind them, and it seems to have worked. It was enough to rout the Yari Ashigaru. We're gonna have a lot of units routing but surviving, unfortunately. And here's the issue. Most of those units on the minimap, they are not Yari Ashigaru. They are actually Bo Ashigaru and Samurai. And that's not going to bode well for my men. Even if it's on legendary difficulty, these are still the Yari Ashigaru. No matter how much experience you have, they are not going to be saved from arrow fire. There is no improvements to armor from experience. On the other hand, I have tercios who are a valuable unit. They can take fire, but I'd much rather they don't. Interestingly, a lot of the enemy units are going for the rear. They're trying to approach the fort from the north, from the path through the forest, through that forested hill. They're trying to approach, and I don't really see that often. I don't see the AI take that path very often unless you try and bait it to the units. So it caught me off guard. I was not sure what was going on. There's a lot of Yari Ashigaru closing on the fort, and they're wavering before they even manage to contact any units. That's how much of a morale debuff they're suffering. They have such low morale to begin with, and they're under gunfire. Some of them might be afraid because of superior enemy numbers nearby. There's them getting threatened from the flanks and the rear. We're taking some fire arrows, unfortunately. We're taking fire arrow volleys. You can see this is where the real carnage begins. Most of my units have taken relatively light casualties. This section of the walls has taken fire, is now on fire, and I'm pulling the tercios back. And this is why I hate bows so much in this game. They make the fight so incredibly cumbersome. They make the fight so incredibly cumbersome. I'm sending my general and the Yari cavalry around in a very wide flank, anticipating the route. I don't want to... I don't want to... I don't want to solve a battle and have most of the units survive, like a huge chunk of them, like an entire army survive. I want to make the victory as decisive as possible, and I'm doing the extremely lame thing when you're fighting a bunch of bows, is just pull your units back, just a general retreat towards the far side of the fort, and try and entice them to start climbing the walls. They will start taking casualties when climbing the walls, and after climbing, they begin climbing, scaling the walls, they will no longer be able to fire until the entire unit crosses over. So it gives us the advantage. Once they start filing into the forts, once they start trickling in, we can charge our Yari Ashigaru back forward and have guns support them. Unfortunately for me, I have some units of Bo Ashigaru and maybe Bo Samurai down there who are approaching from the south of the fort instead of taking the bait and going for the wall. And it gets a bit tricky to use guns in this narrow space. I have like 7 units of tercios, or 6 units of tercios, and lining them all up to get them to give them all a clear shot on the enemy is not easy, especially when they're just bugging out and not responding to orders effectively. And here we are taking enemy fire. I mean, you know, I decided I'm just gonna accept the losses. I'm just gonna charge in with a general attack, send in the Yari Ashigaru as quick as possible, neutralize the flag, get tercios firing. I'm willing to take the losses. I'm sending some tercios into the melee as well, the ones that have run out of ammo. So it has turned into what is effectively a battle of attrition now. We just have to hope that we gained enough of an advantage in the previous phases of the fight that we can just... And that's it. Yeah, that's the army losses. That's the army losses, and I have my general and the Yari cavalry ready to intercept all these units. I also have some tercios taking positions up on the walls to get some shots at the running away. I really like. I'll comment on the visuals and the whole sound design and everything. It really tells you something when this is not a difficult fight, but the game somehow manages to make it feel cataclysmic just to the sheer scale of it. And you don't need any special disaster battle mode or any special survival battle. This is just a normal campaign battle. This is just what the campaign gives you when you get to this stage of the campaign. So even when unit experience kind of ruins the balance and it kind of makes units into unbreakable heroes, it's still interesting to try and position units as effectively as you can, especially with gunpowder infantry, trying to position them as much as possible and figuring out all these different ways to present them targets and enjoy the sights and the visuals. Like, oh my god, it looks so cool, but this is genuinely cool. Like, the sound effects and the visuals actually contribute to the experience in a way that even when the fight is not a difficult one, certainly not a difficult one, it's still enjoying to play it and see it all unfold and see all the chaos unfold. And it really says something about Portuguese tercios when a Yachty cavalry getting 600 kills is still only halfway towards getting the top kill count. There's a gap of 600 kills between the Yachty cavalry and the tercios, when cavalry are normally the ones who have the highest kill counts. It really tells you something. Not just like tercios in particular, but gunpowder units in general. Even Eco Iki Matchlock Ashigaru, with their terrible accuracy, can rout units quite effectively with the morale debuff. And it's a close victory. I accept it, honestly. I accept that this was a close victory. I don't think I deserved a heroic one or a decisive one. I made a few mistakes with my cavalry, and not anticipating the bow rush at the very end, I underestimated how many units they had left. 871 to 6,977, and I think we took about 80 losses towards friendly fire, and that's a difficulty, especially when you're using cavalry outside the fort. You're always going to just have to accept that there's going to be friendly fire. We got 2 units of tercios with above 1,000 kills, and I think they expended all of their ammo. The Yachty cavalry couldn't even get close, even attacking routing units. That's just insane. One unit of tercios got almost went almost 1.5 or 1.6 to 1 versus the enemy. The entire enemy army could not match a unit of Portuguese tercios in terms of kill count. That's insane. That's just insanity. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. That was a very good battle. Thank you very much, Leo Freak. And as always, if you're having trouble in Shogun 2 or Follow the Samurai, or if you just have an interesting battle like this wasn't a difficult one, but it was still very entertaining, just send them my way, and I'll try to get them as soon as possible. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye!